WeeFIM.
The purpose of the WeeFIM is used to measure the functional abilities and the need for assistance that's associated with the level of disability. And the purpose also splits into a need for assistance section, and this is 2 requirements. The first one is that the time or energy another person must expend to serve the dependent needs of a child with a disability. So this is related to the caregiver and the time and energy they expend to help them. And then the second one is extra time a child with a disability must spend to complete ADLs. So if the child takes a longer time in the activity, that is going to be accounted for as well. Because of the scoring system that the WeeFIM uses, it is also used to indicate the severity of a disability or a delay, and because the scoring system ranges from complete independence to total assistance, any score that lies within this section will indicate a delay in a certain domain or task. And there are also observations that can be used to track the changes throughout the rehabilitation process. So you can use the WeeFIM when you first admit the patient, and then use it throughout your rehab progress to see how they are progressing in each domain and task area. The population that WeeFIM serves includes 6-month-old to 7.5 years old, and these children have disabilities or delays, and there is an exception of children over the age of 7 if they are experiencing functional developmental delays. The administration time for WeeFIM is relatively short. It's only approximately 15 minutes to complete per domain, and this includes 15 minutes for self-care, 15 minutes for mobility, and 15 minutes for social functioning as well.
Professionals that can administer. So you have rehabilitation professionals, health professionals, and education professionals. Rehabilitation professionals include OTs and PTs. Health professionals include physicians, nurses, and nurse practitioners. Administration guidelines and best practice principles. The OT should record the rating that best describes the child's level of function for each item on the assessment coding form. If the child does not, will not, or cannot perform an activity, rate the child a level 1 for that item. Clinicians should assess function by directly observing the child. If this is not possible, the OT can interview the parents or the caregivers. The clinician should record actual performance and not record a child's capacity for performance. If there is concern for the child's safety, but not enough to authorize the presence of a helper, rate the child a level 6, which is modified independence. If concern for a child's safety is great enough to authorize a helper, and the helper does not have to have physical contact with the child, rate the child a level 5, which is supervision. Insight about observations and cultural contextual factors. So you have environmental factors and personal factors. The environmental factors include natural environment and human-made changes to the environment, products and technology, supports and relationships, attitudes, services, systems, and policies. The personal factors include chronological age, sexual orientation, gender identity, race and ethnicity, cultural identification and attitudes, social background, social status, and socioeconomic status, upbringing and life experiences, habits and past and current behavioral patterns, psychological assets, temperament, unique character traits and coping styles, education, profession and professional identity, lifestyle, and health conditions and fitness status. Other cultural and contextual factors that are worth mentioning. As a therapist, it is important to recognize that children from different cultures may perform activities differently. Therapists should consider these factors in order to score them appropriately.
The WeeFIM assessment also contains domains and items per section. So there's 18 items total covering 3 domains, and then domains being self-care, mobility, and cognition. And there are 8 items for self-care, 5 items for mobility, and 5 items for cognition. And each of these items are rated on a 7-point scale. So I discussed this previously, where level 1 is total assistance and level 7 is complete independence, and any score within this range will tell you how much progress the child is making or any deficits that you can see. These are some subtests in each domain. So there's the self-care domain, which includes self-care tasks like eating, grooming, bathing, dressing, toileting, and bladder, as well as bowel management. And then you move on to the next domain, which is the mobility domain, and this is how the child gets around. So either chair, wheelchair, toilet, tub, shower, walk, wheelchair, crawl, or stairs. And this is how they can transfer in and out of an area or walk up and down the stairs. And then the last domain was the cognition domain, and this is how the kid cognitively functions in this area. So some areas tested are comprehension, expression, social interaction, problem solving, as well as memory. Now let's get into a detailed portion of the scoring of the WeeFIM assessment.
Scoring. So levels 6 and 7 are considered to be no helper levels, and levels 5, 4, and 3 are modified independence, and level 2 and 1 are complete dependence. Level 7, complete independence. So this is the highest level that you can score on the WeeFIM, and the description is the child safely performs all tasks timely without modification, assistive devices, or aids. The next level is a level 6, which is modified independence, and this is when the child can perform all tasks without assistance and one or more of the following are true. Requires an assistive device or an aid to perform the task, requires the use of an orthosis, takes more than a reasonable amount of time to perform a task than it normally should, or if there is a safety concern. Level 5 is supervision or setup assistance, and the child can perform all of the tasks, but they either require supervision or setup assistance. Supervision is defined as either standby supervision or cues without physical contact from the caregiver, or setup assistance. This is when the caregiver or the therapist has to set up the necessary items for the task or help to apply an assistive device. The next level is the level 4, which is minimal assistance, and this is when the child can perform 75% or more of the task, and they require no more help than touching assistance. The next level is level 3, which is moderate assistance, and this is when the child can perform 50 to 74% of the task, and they do require physical assistance, which is beyond just touching. Levels 2 and 1 are considered complete dependence levels. So for level 2, which is maximal assistance, the child can only perform 25% to 49% of the task. And level 1, which is the lowest level in the WeeFIM scoring, is total assistance. And this is when one or more of the following listed bullets are true. So the child can only perform less than 25% of the task, and they require assistance from 2 helpers to perform the task, or the activity doesn't occur at all.
So now I want to talk to you a little bit about the interpretation of scores for the WeeFIM. One great thing that the clinical guide online has for WeeFIM is that it has these decision trees. Decision trees are super important. It actually makes it a lot easier whenever you're looking at the different domains and how to grade based on what you have seen. So this is an example to the left of a decision tree, but it can be kind of hard to look at it right now, but just to get the layout, that's what it looks like. But it'll start with the start box right at the top left, and it'll say, does the child need supervision to do whatever the domain is that you're observing? And then you either answer yes or no. And if you see that dotted line, above the dotted line means no helper, so that's going to be level 7 and level 6. And then below the dotted line will be a helper involved. And so it'll just walk you straight through, does the child need this? Does he do 50% or more? And then you would answer yes and no, and then you can find your answers based on those questions and if they were able to do it or if they were not. Now, the decision trees do provide specific situations in which the child would score level 1 through level 7. So if you look, each level is represented on the decision trees, and these are really beneficial whenever you're looking at the scores and interpreting them. A score of 1 requires total assistance for the child, which would be considered a major deficit. So if they get a level 1, we know that they are requiring a lot of burden of care is what we talked about. So they're requiring a lot of assistance, and so we kind of want to, and like the last bullet says, each score above 1 shows progression. That's just meaning if they get a level 2, they're able to do level 1, but now they need to only be able to do 25%, etc. To further discuss the interpretation of results, the WeeFIM Clinical Guide Online actually has normative data that you can compare your child that you just observed scores to a group of children within the same age range in the normative sample. So this is really great to see what your child's scores are in comparison to a typically developing child or children, I guess you would say, that you can kind of see big picture. Okay, you got the score, so now let's look and see, are they right in queue with them? Are they a little behind? And it's really great to see kind of where they are in relation to a child that is, developing typically same age. I also want to mention that this can be found in Appendix B in that WeeFIM clinical guide. So now let's look at a case study of the WeeFIM being administered, and I want you to notice how the client participates in these occupations, and then we'll also discuss the scoring and how you would properly score using the WeeFIM. So the client you're about to see is a 7-year-old female with a diagnosis of a developmental delay. Her parents want her to start doing occupational therapy to become more independent in completing those ADLs. So let's take a look at that.
Okay, now I just want to see how you brush your hair, your teeth, and your hands, as well as your face. So can you show me that?
How you wash your hands. Good job. Okay, show her how you wash your face. Okay, let's show her how you brush your teeth.
Okay, now I just want to see how you brush your hair, your teeth, and your hands, as well as your face. So can you show me that? Okay, so since I can't see your daughter bathe, I just want to know how she bathes, what body parts she is capable of doing, and what you need to do.
So usually she does a couple parts of her body, and then I just kind of do the rest, help her out. She kind of forgets sometimes that she has other body parts, but...
Okay, so specifically with this assessment, I need to know what body parts she is bathing herself and what body parts you bathe for her.
Okay, yeah. So she just does like the tops of her legs usually, just the top of them, and then her stomach and her chest, and then that's kind of it. But she'll wash and she'll rinse it and she'll dry it, but she kind of just forgets that there's other things, so I have to do the rest for her.
Okay.
So as the occupational therapist, when you're filling out the WeeFIM assessment and you're looking at the child, you're watching, you're observing what they're able to do, and that might even be like you saw, you're interviewing the parent, and this is what the assessment coding form will look like. So specifically, and we'll go into it in a second, we'll look at each domain and then the parts of each domain that you'll grade. You'll put their levels right there, and we'll show you a little bit closer look in just a second. So now let's discuss how we would, as the occupational therapist, score the patient that we just saw in the previous videos. So let's first look at grooming. So as a part of the WeeFIM, every single domain and every section of the domain has specific instructions that you would do, and this is all found within the clinical guide. But specifically for grooming, the OT would know that the grooming consists of 4 different tasks. Those 4 tasks include brushing teeth, combing or brushing the hair, washing, rinsing, and drying the hands, and then the 4th one is washing, rinsing, and drying the face. So, based on the video that you saw, the patient was able to wash, rinse, and dry their hands and face, so they completed 2 out of those 4 tasks. The parent also, like you saw, had to help with the other 2, so that means that the patient was able to do 50% of the effort, and if you remember from previous slides, 50% would be a level 3, moderate assistant. So that's how you would get that 3 right there next to grooming. All right. So now let's look at the bathing section of the WeeFIM that we just administered. So, like I was talking about, for each section they have a breakdown of what is included in each section and then how you would go about grading for the level of assistance. For bathing regulations and guidelines, you break the body up into 10 different parts. So that's included in chest, left arm, abdomen, perineal area, buttocks, left upper leg, left lower leg, including the foot, and the right lower leg, including the foot. So, if you can remember, the patient was able to wash, rinse, and dry 4 of those body's areas. So she was able to do both upper legs, abdomen, and chest, while the parent said that she had to do the rest. So that would mean that the patient's able to do 40% of the total body area, therefore meaning that she is a level 2 maximal assistance. So you can see how we break down each part, and it's it should be very objective on what they could do and then what the helper could do, and that's how you.
How the scoring affects a child's occupational performance. A low score indicates a deficit in a specific domain or task. The scores help the OT determine deficits and develop interventions aimed at improving the child's independence in that particular area. The WeeFIM score is used throughout treatment to determine if there are any improvements in specific domains. The end goal is an increase in independence levels.
As in many assessments, the occupational therapy has a big role, and in this assessment, the OT performs the patient evaluation. They also interpret the data and the scores, and they also develop interventions for the patient. And the COTA, or the Certified Occupational Therapy Assistant, they cannot interpret the results or perform the patient evaluation, as well as they cannot develop the interventions, but they can write the observations that they make and refer it back to the OT and give them feedback on anything the OT has missed or anything that could be helpful.
So now let's discuss the validity and reliability of the WeeFIM. So one particular study right here that we're going to talk about examined the equivalence reliability between 2 administrations of the WeeFIM. So that was with both direct observation and then parental interview. As you can recall with the videos that we've shown during this slideshow, one was a parental interview and then the other was observation where we're watching the patient perform the task, and then we both result in scoring of the WeeFIM. So this study was looking at whether or not if someone did a direct observation or if they did an interview, if they got the same scores. And so they were looking at that reliability. The results of this study was a correlation coefficient for the total WeeFIM rating at 0.93, and so that's a very strong reliability when administering across different tests. So we wanted to make sure that across different tests was it showing the same scores, and that's really important because not everybody is going to do it the exact same way, meaning that you're not going to have the same OT do this WeeFIM assessment every time. So it's super important that we're getting the same reliable answers every time. Another study looking at the validity of the WeeFIM was a longitudinal design with correlation and responsiveness analysis. So they used actually 5 different indexes to measure validity, and all 5 of these indexes were statistically significant, meaning they were less than 0.05. And so what this was resulting in is that it showed an overall reliable change over time, and that the WeeFIM was measuring what it sought out to measure. So that was the ability to see the level of assistance, if they're getting better over time, and this study really showed that it is measuring what it's intended to measure, which is validity, and that's what you really need to make sure you have whenever you're doing these assessments. And then lastly, this is talking about validity, internal validity, and reliability of the WeeFIM. This study, they looked at self-care, locomotion, and cognition in regards to separation reliability, resulting in 0.87, 0.99, and 0.95, and it resulted in strong reliability between items and the participants. So this was just another article backing up that the WeeFIM is reliable and it has high internal validity, meaning that it tests what it intends to test.
Strengths of the WeeFIM. So the WeeFIM has a shorter administration time than other assessments, so this just makes it a little more practical. It's concise, and the scoring is very simple from levels 7 to 1 that we discussed earlier. And it requires certified training, and it has discipline-free requirements, so it can be administered by any trained health, developmental, or educational professional. Limitations of the WeeFIM. So WeeFIM training can be a little expensive, and it does require consistency of the staff so that the scores aren't subjective and that they're consistent across therapy sessions. And if the task cannot be directly observed, parents may not give completely accurate descriptions in the interview that the therapist would have to conduct with them.
Factors that cause bias for assessment results. The OT should record capacity performance rather than actual performance. So you have experimenter bias, which is the OT's cognitive bias that causes them to subconsciously influence the clients. And you also have unconscious bias, which is a social stereotype about certain groups of people that individuals form outside of their own conscious awareness. And this sort of ties back into the cultural influences. And then you also have environmental impacts.
The next portion we're going to talk about is how you provide the results to the family. When describing the results of this assessment to family members, you do not want to use medical terms or any terms that the parent could not understand. So when you're administering the assessment, you should describe to the parent what each score means. So, for example, if the child scores a 7, which means complete independence in a certain area, you have to explain to the caregiver or the parent that this child is completely independent in this domain and in these tasks. The next part is you need to explain what the lower numbers mean in regards to the dependence level and how the scores will impact intervention and strategies. So if you have a lower number score, the child is going to need more help and assistance in certain areas, and the interventions need to be geared towards that goal in that area in order to improve independence in that domain.